that our grandchildren and great-grandchildren will one day be looking back and call the Toomers oak trees.
As long as we never had to touch those hanging wire AUs stretching across the corner itself, I'm good.
Back again to talk another special Auburn topic. I'm your host, Kyle Loomis, back in the saddle here at E2C Network, where we share the whole Auburn experience. If you're watching live on the video format of this podcast, you'll see a very familiar face for those of you in the audio format when we talk topics that are around Auburn aesthetics, Auburn history. There is one individual that comes to mind to discuss such things, and that is Mr. Clint Richardson of the Auburn Uniform Database. I am happy to have him here with me for a very exciting and special topic podcast about Toomers, the Oaks, and some toilet paper. Clint Richardson, welcome back.
It's always good to be back with good news.
Definitely a good day to be back discussing something that's been a 10 to a 12-year journey in completion. The timeline is a little bit confusing to some out there, but we think we've got it pretty much nailed down. But what are we discussing today? Well, within the last day, depending on when you are listening or watching this podcast, the announcement was made by Auburn University that rolling of the actual new Toomers Oaks can resume with the 2023 football athletic calendar year. It is a big day. I'm very excited about it myself. I know Clint is too. Clint, obviously I can share my reactions a little bit, but I'd love to hear your thoughts today. Did you see this coming? Were you anticipating this? What you think?
No, I wasn't thinking about this, honestly. Just I don't know if we just got used to it or if it's just been pushed out of my mind at least, but I never thought about the fact that we just haven't been rolling those two primary Toomer oak trees. It's been a while. It's been a couple of years, and I every time we walked around Toomers after a football game, I saw the signs that said, do not roll this tree, and just didn't think anything else about it. I didn't know if we were close or what, but it's it sounds dumb, but it's big news. It's back. It's finally here, and I can't wait for the first game to walk out of that 2:30 Jordan-Hare Stadium game and drenching and dying of sweat. But to walk to Toomers and see truly a snow-capped Auburn campus. The last couple of years, it's been kind of, you see a lot of the white around Sanford Hall and on Sanford Lawn, but then once you get closer to the corner, it just kind of stopped. And now we get back to what made Auburn's best tradition one of the greatest traditions in all of college athletics.
I was going to say, if you are still sweating profusely after that game, you can just dab yourself with a little bit of that TP hanging from the actual Toomers oak trees. Now, I can't believe, honestly, that we're saying this, because as you and I were discussing pre-show, the timeline, I think, is a little bit confusing to some, because if you'll see in some of the official announcements, it says 6 years since the last rolling capability that you've had of the Toomers oak trees. That is somewhat true, but truly this has been 10 years since they were taken down in 2013. And even, since this saga began with Harvey Updike, we'll talk about that in just a little bit. It's just been quite the journey to get here. I even said, I remember posting about this in my personal social media. This is not a big deal in the grand scheme of things. 2 trees is not the end all be all of the world, but what this symbolizes, what we talk about here at E2C Network, the whole of the Auburn experience at all. We always go there to celebrate that I wouldn't get to take my future children underneath those giant oak branches. And obviously the ones that are there now are not giant by any stretch of the imagination, but they're there and set and seem to be doing well enough for them to be able to be rolled now. And it's really not even the rolling part, Clint, let's be honest. It's the cleanup process. You've seen it several times. Give people an idea of what happens, when a game day is over.
I mean, yeah, you're right. Toilet paper isn't really going to hurt the tree. Even if you throw in hundreds, thousands of pounds of TP, that's not the dangerous part to the trees themselves. It's Sunday morning, crack of dawn, you got the cleanup crew out there, and it's, I mean, think firefighting. They've got, pressure washing and, jet propulsioned water blasting off every bit of toilet paper from these trees, and that's where the danger came in. And thank I'm glad we have such a good group here at Auburn that has taken care of the trees. And because when the news came out almost 10 years ago, or I guess over 10 years ago, they did such a good job of just kind of educating the layman and the casual fans like us about why this was an issue. I think like we were saying, like toilet paper itself is not the issue, but it's the cleanup, and that can cause, you know, all these subsequent issues with the tree itself.
Definitely. Obviously, as someone who's got a biology degree from Auburn, this is some right up my alley, taking care of the environment. I'm not one of these green people, but at the same time, I do value, obviously, all living things, if I can go on those kind of sentimental routes and things. But I love our Toomers corner. I love our Toomers Oaks. And obviously, a lot of painstaking effort has gone into maintaining that corner, beautifying it, and obviously maintaining those trees now. So a lot of thought and processes have been gone into making sure that this is the right time to do this. And so I love that they've taken their time in some respect, but it is time to get back to the old way of things. Just briefly, could you give us like a timeline of what's happened since that fateful day that Harvey Updike called in to say that allegedly at that time we thought poisoned some trees? It's the Paul Feinbaum show after all, hardly any of it's real. But since that day to now, could you give us just a brief overview of how everything went down?
Yeah, sure. So that Feinbaum call was actually January 27th, 2011. So what, just over 2 weeks after Auburn took home the national championship.
Back when I
Um,
had a better hairline than I do now, for those
I
of you
don't,
on
I
video.
don't, I don't believe that. Um, but yeah, I mean, I didn't realize just how quick a turnaround that angry, creepy old man had. Um, but that was January 2011. When Auburn got word of it, obviously they did their due diligence and found that those allegations were accurate. I don't know if you remember, you probably do since you were a student here. They dug out every bit of dirt from around Sanford Lawn and sucked it up with giant vacuums, and they were cleaning up as much as they could to just not only preserve the oak trees but all the plant life in that area, because the spike ADD out that he used is a deadly chemical in the plant world. So you know it was going to do some damage one way or another, and Auburn had to do their best to you know negate most of it. But
Mm-hmm.
2013 was the final roll for A-Day, and good Lord, hundreds of thousands of people showed up to say goodbye to the trees and throw one last roll of toilet paper, and that was a wild day for sure. Um, February 2015, the two new trees were replanted. So almost 2 years after
Mm-hmm.
the trees were removed, did we get new trees. Um, I guess we can call it a little presumptive at this point, optimistic, but Auburn allowed rolling to resume in the fall of 2016. So about a year and a half, 2 years after the new trees were planted. And then against LSU, some foreign dude decides he wants to set fire to the toilet paper. So the new trees are now fire damaged. The following February, both trees were replaced because of the damage from the fire and the fact that they both hadn't really started to establish themselves in that space. Um, so we got new trees in 2017, and now 6.5 years later, do we get to see the rolling of the Toomer oats return?
It
Hopefully
is.
for good.
Yeah, hopefully this is the final bit of the journey that I'm just kind of as a formality calling it 10 years, even though it's been only 6 years since the last attempt at this thing. When you look at the saga that has happened to get to this point, it's quite an incredible journey. I just briefly thinking back through some of the things that you discussed there. Yes, I was a student here. I was actually listening to Paul Feinbaum the day this guy announced, I remember vividly hearing the call on my car radio on the way to golf class at Auburn. Yes, I took that as an elective, not good at golf. And that didn't help at all. But I remember laughing it off, thinking it's just some random Bama fan. And lo and behold, a few days later, I started getting whispers from certain people in the biology department. It's real. Like, it's as bad. And about a few days later, that's when we started seeing the press conference, things being set up, and official statements starting to kind of roll out and things like that. And a really scary thing for me was, yes, this is a herbicide. It's not meant to hurt humans in any way. This dude, I lived literally downtown in Auburn. Yeah. This dude literally came while I was asleep 100 yards away, probably a little more than 100 yards away, and did this. And it's frightening to me that someone could come out and do something like that.
If they can do that to a tree, what else are they capable of?
Absolutely.
You said you were a student when that happened. I was still in high school, and I remember, of course it's again, it's just trees, but it was a big deal. And I remember having some good friends who weren't Auburn fans come up and like, what's the big deal? Like, they're just trees. Like, yeah, it's just a piece of bark. It's just another living organism among everything else. But like, to truly understand the Auburn history, the Auburn spirit, is to understand why these trees were important, and so that was kind of an odd to navigate through. And again, I think Auburn did such a good job in that 2011, 2012, 2013 time period of just educating people on the damage that was done, everything. I mean, Auburn flipped every rock that they could, literally, and what ultimately resulted from it. So I think all things considered, we had the best team on hand to handle it.
Yeah, and you just can't say enough about how it was handled, all the effort that went involved from the initial onset of it to handle the situation to now to get to this point. Hopefully this is the last time that we're talking about a stage of this process. This is the final piece of it. And we're talking about the Toomers oaks that our grandchildren and great-grandchildren will one day be looking back and call the Toomers oak trees.
As long as we never had to touch those hanging wire AUs stretching across the corner itself, I'm good.
It is going to be always a little bit of a fun bit of history in the Auburn history archives and in the Auburn experience that we can talk about. To me, this, yes, to put it into perspective, this is just some trees, but it's more than that. It's what it represents. It represents the gathering place for people to celebrate. Yes, a football game. Yes, some other athletic event, but there's graduations, birth announcements, proposals, Clint Richardson, and several other just momentous occasions that people have come to this place to gather and to celebrate together. And I will never forget being at the last roll, as many of you who are watching and listening to this will, I'm sure, or at least even if you weren't able to be there watching from afar. And the thing for me that sticks out from this whole ordeal was that one man decided to try to hurt and divide a fan base. And all he got out of it was a picture of the Auburn family coming together, not because of the hate of one man, but because they loved each other that much to be together at Toomer's Corner on that last roll day. So out of all the tragedy, out of all the sadness, out of all the ugliness of this situation, here we sit today, Clint, and we can finally, in a mere weeks, hopefully after beating UMass, and nothing's a given these days, with the whole Georgia State situation a few years ago, but we feel pretty confident that in a couple weeks, you and I will be rolling Toomer's Corner with so many more. And we need to throw up a prayer for these trees because they are going to get so much love. But
I hope that Auburn has something planned to celebrate the first roll.
Yeah, that would be really cool, wouldn't it? And this crew that's here now, I have a feeling that they have thought through that. If there's something that they can pull off, when I'm say this crew, this fan experience, that part of the athletic department. So I have a feeling that something will be commemorated in a sense, and it would be really cool. Any suggestions you want to throw out as we kind of wrap up our time?
Just make it a big block party.
A big block party with tons of TP, and just let's not end it. Let's just have a little block party the entire night. So here we sit, 10, 12, 6 years, whatever year amount you want to use. We are rolling Toomer's Corner, the trees, again, once more. If you want to follow up with me about this topic and much more, you can follow me on X, I guess, at Kyle Loomis 24 and E2C Network anywhere, including X. Where can they follow you, Clint Richardson?
Follow me on Twitter. That's what I'm always going to call it. At ClintAU24, Instagram and Facebook at Auburn Uniforms. And as always, check out the Auburn Uniform database at auburnuniforms.com.
Thank you guys so much for tuning in this episode. And we're ready to see you at Toomers coming up very soon. War Eagle.
War Eagle.